Welcome back to the People's Cabinet. So Zohran Mamdani, as everyone knows, has been laser focused on the issue of affordability. It's too expensive to live in New York City. He has not only laid that bare, but he has also proposed concrete ways to address it. Some are controversial, some are less controversial, but he's putting substantive policy proposals in front of the public. Tomi Lahren, when I went to debate her in Nashville, obviously wanted to get my thoughts on Democratic messaging in general.
Table issues are the most important thing. How we're going to pay for things, how we're going to fight back against inflation should be the number one priority of every single elected official, not just Democrat in this country.
Do you think Democrats find that boring?
They shouldn't. If they do, they're making a mistake.
But do you think that that's where they are now?
I don't think so. I mean, like if you look at like Zohran Mamdani in New York, many people I think on either side of the aisle would argue that the reason why he catapulted to the front was his laser focus on affordability.
Do you think that his ways of making things affordable, do you think that that's the right way to go?
As I mentioned before, I oversaw a city budget of $3.5 billion. I understand how tax revenue is critical to a city. What I think is ironic is that there's always conversation about wealthy people moving away when you talk about taxes. Do I think some wealthy people might move from New York as a result of higher taxes? Of course. But there is very rarely conversation about the people every day who can barely afford to live in New York City who are moving out. And if you look at the studies macro, actually wealthy people don't move away in the droves that the conspiracies are saying. And I think we should care a lot more about the fact that every single person in New York, I don't care how much money you have, thinks it's way too expensive to live there.
So I kind of cut her off in advance of what I thought that she would come back at me on Zohran Mamdani. But here's the interesting thing that is worth noting in that conversation. She did not disagree with me that the economy and kitchen table issues are key to winning any election. As a matter of fact, she implied that the Democratic Party is distracted from that kind of messaging. And so when you think about kitchen table issues, how you're going to afford things is number one as people think about the economy. As a matter of fact, that's probably more relatable than just saying economy in general, right? We've heard from elected officials from the right and the left that the economy is good when people aren't feeling it. We've seen that in the data. And so when you talk about what is important in kitchen table issues, what does that mean? It means, can you afford stuff? And so that is what Zohran Mamdani is focused on. And I remain steadfast. And that's what the Democratic Party needs to focus on. That's why Mamdani has been so successful. And in many ways, also talking about how, by his example, if you're going to talk about you caring about working class people, you need to not only just talk the talk, but walk the walk. How he is not from the establishment, how he is running against someone who is raising money in the Hamptons and talking about having a dysfunctional marriage with Donald Trump, who does not have 10 plus credible sexual harassment claims against him, who is proposing concrete things, whether you like them or not, in comparison to Cuomo, who's spending a lot of his time with very, very negative advertising and not a lot of substance in his proposals. So, of course, Tomi Lahren and others on the right will fearmonger and say, you don't want this guy. But here's the reality. It is hard when you're looking at the landscape and the messaging to really justify how much attention we are spending on what will happen to rich people if Zohran Mamdani is elected. I feel like I have credibility on this topic because I, again, was chief of staff of a city of 650 or 700,000 people that had I think it's now $4.5 billion. I said $3.5 billion in the interview because that's what it was when I was there. I understand how tax revenue is so important, but I understand even more that working class people are the lifeblood of cities, not just rich people. And so we spent so much time saying, well, what will happen to rich people when they move out? And they try to justify it by saying revenue. And I get that. But the studies show, as I've talked about in previous episodes, that people don't move out, first and foremost. But secondly, there are many, many people, many more people who are moving out in droves every day from cities because it's too expensive, especially New York City. So as others like Elizabeth Warren have said, let's focus on them a little bit more than what we are seeing right now. As a matter of fact, every single voter, at least the average voter, should care much more about that. So I'm not sure how we continue to allow this conversation to be hijacked. And I'm not sure how it's even a compelling narrative to say, well, what happens if a rich person moves from New York City? We should be talking about why so many people who are working class keep having to move out of New York City, and how do we keep them here and keep cities like New York from losing so many people because it's so affordable. That's exactly what Zohran Mamdani is talking about. The Democratic Party should embrace affordability as a message. And I look forward to the many conversations in the future for people on the left or right about this issue. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the People's Cabinet. If you did, please like, subscribe, ring that bell, and tell us who else you would like to see sworn in. And let us know in the comments what other topics you'd like us to cover. Let's go.